Be seated. Members of Knesset, I open this special meeting of the Knesset in honor of the President of the United States of America, William Jefferson Clinton, Thursday, 27th October 1994. Our honored guests, the President of the United States of America and the First Lady, the President of the State of Israel and Mrs. Weizmann, former Presidents of Israel, members of Knesset, distinguished guests. It is with a deep sense of honor that the Knesset welcomes today in Jerusalem President Bill Clinton, his wife Hillary, and their distinguished entourage. Their presence here on the occasion of the signing of the peace treaty between Israel and Jordan is tangible evidence of the contribution made to the peace process by the administration and the people of the great American nation. In the presidential election platform called Putting People First, which you, Mr. President, wrote with your Vice President, Mr. Al Gore, the clause on the Middle East reads as follows: the United States will work with the new Israeli government to move the peace process forward. In doing so, the United States cannot rightly predetermine the outcome of the negotiations nor impose peace on any party. And indeed, the peace which has been achieved between Israel and Jordan, like the other agreements signed recently, prove in its clearest possible way the wisdom of your approach. Our long and stony path to peace started with the establishment of the state. The words of David Ben-Gurion, the founding father of the State of Israel, as he proclaimed the new state's independence on 15th May 1948, said, "We appeal in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace. We extend our hand to all neighboring states and their peoples in an offer of peace and good neighborliness, and appeal to them to establish bonds of cooperation and mutual help." To our regret, the hand extended in peace was rejected time after time. Too many wives were left widows. Too many parents buried their sons and daughters. Too many children were orphaned. Too many people were wounded. Our independence and peace were attained, but at a heavy cost of blood, sweat, and tears, oceans of tears. Now, towards the train of peace pulls into the second station, there are those who seek to sabotage the tracks. We had barely dried our tears at the death of Nachshon Wachman, whose parents are with us this evening in the gallery, representing all the bereaved families, when the lives of tens of Israelis were cut short in the very heart of Tel Aviv. Terrorism, the enemy of humanity, strives to divert us from the road to peace, but we are determined to overcome. In 1975, the first window to peace was opened when Prime Minister Israel Menachem Begin and the President of Egypt Anwar Sadat, in a daring and far-sighted decision and with the sound and firm assistance of the United States led by President Jimmy Carter, formulated the first peace treaty in our region. In 1992, the government of Israel, headed by Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir confirmed its participation in the Madrid conference and again embarked on a comprehensive peace mission. This mission gained momentum in the last years, and yesterday in the Arabah, His Majesty King Hussein and Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin signed one more peace treaty. It seems to me that both our nations have this historic link between the War of Independence and the establishment of democracy. In 1948, a mere 3 years after one of the greatest tragedies in the history of mankind, which witnessed the slaughter of a third of our people at the hands of the Nazis and their collaborators, the 600,000 Jews of the land of Israel took upon their shoulders the daunting task of rehabilitating the beaten and wounded nation and building an independent, sovereign state in our historic homeland. In the bloody war of liberation, the founding fathers established our democracy. The state and its democracy came into being simultaneously. And this has ensured our strength. Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, very distinguished guests, this House, which welcomes you with honor and pride, reflects the uniqueness of our society. It bears the name of our people's ancient supreme judicial council, the Knesset, and it has the same number of members, 120. Judaism, mother of the monotheistic faith, which is founded on humane values, embodied the basic values of democratic debate and also the acceptance of the majority decision. Facing you, Mr. President, our 120 delegates and hundreds of former Knesset members, we are pluralistic, multi-party, sometimes stormy parliament, a parliament which makes history at a breathtaking rate. And here in this house we have Jews, Arabs, Druze. Some of us immigrated to Israel after having experienced the horror of the Holocaust. We have amongst us survivors of Auschwitz and Dachau. Some of our members have lost children in wars. This house is acting just like one of the best parliaments. And we are acting with the Supreme Court, whose distinguished members are with us today, vigilantly maintain the rule of law and give practical expression to the principle of separation of powers. Most Knesset members have served in the Israel Defense Forces, and we have here their ranks represented from corporals through general to chief of staff. The president of the state was a commander of the Israel Air Force. The prime minister was a chief of staff. We have amongst us heroes, some of whom were awarded medals for bravery. At first glance, a military state, but do not be misled. We are all lovers of peace, whether in uniform or upon our return to civilian life. We all long to beat our swords into plowshares, and we all yearn for the day when nation will not lift up sword against nation. We are the sons and daughters of a nation who throughout our generations have conquered the loftiest heights, yet also the abyss of sorrow. In the words of the poet, a mountain without a grave at its foot cannot be conquered. We have had our fill of graves. We are aspiring to live as a normal people in its historic homeland, enjoying friendly relations with its neighbors and also a flourishing economy, maintaining a just society. Mr. President, you and the American people have a decisive role to play in accelerating the peace process in our region and throughout the world. And for this, may the Almighty bless you. And now, the Prime Minister.
Your Excellency, the President of the United States, Your Excellency, the President of Israel, the Speaker of the Knesset, distinguished members of Knesset, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jerusalem, the state, eternal state, the capital of the state of Israel, and the very heart of the Jewish people. The state of Israel opens its heart before you today and shakes your hand warmly, Your Excellency, the President. You are at home. May I be allowed to welcome two people who are celebrating their birthday today.
אני מבקש לומר להילרי קלינטון, שהיה לה יום הולדת אתמול. מזל טוב, עד 120, ולמזכיר המדינה מר כריסטופר, היום חל יום הולדתו. יום הולדת שמח.
There's no end to the unlimited debt that we owe the United States, and you in particular, Your Excellency. The State of Israel tells you today from its very heart a deep felt thank you. Mr. President, you are a great world power with over 250 million inhabitants, and we have only a small state, small in area and in population. We have over 5 million people only, that's all, very little compared to the United States. What then links us and has linked us for 2 generations with bonds of unequaled friendship? Why does our heart swell in our meetings with you, with people of the administration, with members of Congress, of both houses of Congress, and with Americans? How has it come about that we are so very confident and have so much trust in you? The answer is a comprehensive one. It's joint and shared values, the affiliation, our affiliation to the Bible, even though our religions are different, your very large Jewish community, and yes, of course, also political and defense interests. Mr. President, you have before you then my answer. The warmth that emanates to us from outside, from inside the White House, from the Capitol, and from the United States public, the warmth that crosses seas and oceans and crosses many millions of miles from Jerusalem to Washington and Washington to Jerusalem, is built first and foremost upon decades of mutual trust, of deep mutual trust, which has been cultivated over many long years, which has been built diligently, brick upon brick. We always know that our deep and sincere concern for peace and security are also shared by the United States. And in my meetings with you, Mr. President, have always been frank on both sides, have always been a joy to the State of Israel. There are some people who say that your spiritual mentor, Dr. Walt, summoned you to his deathbed and made you promise that if ever you should attain the high position of President of the United States and become the leader of the free world, you would never harm the State of Israel. I don't know whether that story is true. I've never asked you, Mr. President, but there is one thing I can say. If indeed the story is true, we are entitled today to say to Father, quote, and say it confidently, rest in peace, for your testament has been fulfilled. Mr. President, you have come to our war-stricken area that has known so much terror and violence, at one of its greatest hours, but also a very difficult hours. Yesterday, you were a senior participant in the ceremony of signing the peace treaty between the State of Israel and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Following yesterday's ceremony, we woke up this morning to a new reality. Now we shall instill real content in that peace. Yesterday we said peace is made between people who have dreamt of peace, who deeply want peace. And in Jerusalem and in Amman, there are many such. The peace of yesterday with Jordan is a great step towards what we hope will be the end of the era of wars in the Middle East. Wars that have brought great suffering upon the population of our area and that have caused concern to the rest of the world. We are confident that this time, as always, we shall find your country to be helpful, and you personally to be helpful to Jordan and to us in cultivating that peace. Behind us, we have the Agreement of Principles with the PSO, which put an end to the bloody conflict of over a century. But before us, there's a great deal of work yet to be done to settle the conflicts that still remain in bringing about true good neighborly relations between us. Because, as we have said, peace has to be made between people. And behind us, we have the peace agreement with Jordan, but before us, there's continued negotiations with Syria in order to give true meaning to the two words that we have spoken over and over again from every platform and in every political program over the past 2 decades. Those two words are comprehensive peace, peace for everyone, peace with all the Arab nations, peace with the Muslim world. We know that in the Arab states and among the Palestinians, there is widespread peace, support for peace. And even if we haven't yet realized all the stages of the peace between us, but let us admit the truth, there are also enemies to the peace. They use terror and sow death and destruction. They are murderers, they are kidnappers, they shoot indiscriminately. Only very recently, they placed an explosive charge in a bus in the very heart of Tel Aviv, causing the death of 22 of its passengers, only because they are Jews and they were Israelis. They murdered the IDF soldier Nachshon Wachsman, the eyes of whose sorrowing parents look down upon us from the gallery here in this house. We do not intend to give in to terror. That is why we shall continue to operate against the terrorists. And it was in an operation against terrorists that last week Sergeant Neil Poraz was killed in an attempt to rescue Nachshon Wachsman from his kidnappers. We also face extremist Islamic fanatic terrorism, the enemy of peace, the enemy of the State of Israel, the enemy of the Jews, which threatens not only the peace of our own country, but also threatens other moderate regimes and threatens your very country as well, Mr. President, who threaten the peace of the world. Iran is the leader of that terrorism, and we honor your policy of a dual containment against Iran and against Iraq. And from this rostrum, I call upon you, Mr. President, and I call upon the U.S. Congress and the United States people to lead the struggle against this murderous terrorism, which is trying to murder Israelis and to murder the peace, because this terrorism, it knows no borders, and it is liable to cross borders and seas in order to sow death. In the journey to peace with the Palestinians and the Jordanians, with the Syrians and the Lebanese, we know that you and your great nation are our partners, that you understand our worries, that you feel for our difficulties, that you support us in our most difficult hours, in times of crisis and in our everyday lives, and not only at festive celebrations. Mr. President, we shall ourselves decide upon the fate of this country, but we are confident in you and in your people, and know that you will stand in support of us along the hard way, because there are so many mines still strewn along it. The fuel that makes the engine of peace run is the hope that nourishes this people, the hope, just as the name of your village. We place our hopes in you too, Mr. President, President Clinton. We know that you will not let us down. We have great dreams. We have great hopes. We do not wish to live on our swords forever. We are committed to peace, but we are also prepared to face any enemy. Mr. President, you know, of course, and it is important to us to stress once again that our road to peace is the road of compromise. We know that we will not get all that we wish to receive, and we have to impart to our other partners in peace negotiations that they will not receive all that they would like. As a democratic state, there are differences in our midst about the policy to be pursued in regard to compromise. Mr. President, I'd like to welcome you in our home in Jerusalem, the very center of the longings of the Jewish people, as it has been for thousands of years. The great majority of the people of Israel regard Jerusalem as the capital of Israel under Israeli sovereignty. Jerusalem, the great majority of the people of Israel regards Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and under Israeli sovereignty. Jerusalem is not an issue that is negotiable or that can be bargained over. Faithful to our heritage, we shall always allow freedom of access and of religious worship to members of all religions. But Jerusalem has always been and will always be forever the capital of the state of Israel under Israeli sovereignty, the very heart of the Jewish people. From this Jerusalem, from this city of peace, from the very center of the world, allow me, Mr. President, to send you our welcome. As I have said, as it's in the Bible, you will be welcomed in Zion and welcomed always in Jerusalem. And peace be to Israel. Shalom, Mr. President, and goodbye. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. I now call to the rostrum Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, member of Knesset. We have a tradition in this House that on such occasions, both the Prime Minister and the head of opposition make a speech. It is the tradition that the head of the largest party, the largest opposition party, makes a speech. I'd like to note that the peace treaty has been ratified in this Knesset with a very broad majority, and by both sides of the House. I now call upon Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu.
כבוד נשיא המדינה והגברת ויצמן,
Mr. President and Mrs. Weizmann, Mr. President of the United States and Mrs. Clinton, the chief rabbis of Israel, Your Excellency the Speaker of the Knesset, Your Excellency the Prime Minister, members of the House, distinguished guests, many in Israel, and many of those present here today have already forded the waters of the Jordan. Some did so in dark nights, straining to hear every sound of the water, with their ears open to every rustle from the reeds along the bank. Others did so in broad daylight, and despite the machines of war and through pillars of smoke and fire. We today honor and remember all those who fell before the journey's end, those who departed and did not return, and those who crossed the valley in the pitch of night, armed only with a water flask and a map and an enduring dream. And now, before our very eyes, that dream of old is becoming a reality. Soon we shall all be able to cross the Jordan on bridges of peace, our gaze fixed upon the mountains of Gilad and Moab, with a new hope and with no fear. The peace between Israel and Jordan brings good tidings to both nations, and it also unites the two parts of this chamber. Mr. President, in light of this particular event, I shall now go on to speak in English for the honor of our distinguished guests.
I want to thank you
אדוני הנשיא, אני
for
מבקש
your
להודות לך
consistent support
הסיוע
and friendship for the state of Israel and for your unrelenting efforts to help us achieve what we all hope will be a genuine peace with our neighbors. And I want to assure you, too, that this House stands united in its fervent desire for peace. Let no one question the depth of this sentiment across the aisles of the Knesset. What we've always sought is an end to the slings of war, to the unspeakable agony of grief. What we seek today is a peace that will endure beyond the ceremonies of yesterday, and yes, beyond the ceremonies of tomorrow. Happily, Mr. President, this is the prospect offered by the peace treaty we have signed with Jordan. אדוני היושב-ראש, הסכם השלום עם ירדן הוא בשורה טובה, אבל זה איננו דבר מובן מאליו. כל נער יודע שיש בהיסטוריה דוגמאות לשלום אמת, ויש גם דוגמאות לשלום כזב. היו הסכמי שלום שהרחיקו מלחמה וסכנה, והיו הסכמי שלום שקרבו מלחמה ואסון. אנו זוכרים את המחיר הכבד ששילמה במאה הנוכחית האנושות כולה,
and especially from the Jewish people, for the failure of well-intentioned statesmen to distinguish between these two types of agreement. It is therefore our supreme responsibility to distinguish between a genuine peace and a bogus one, from which to emerge and to which they can seek refuge. There's not a partner who extends one hand to us with an olive branch while the other shields a deadly Islamic scimitar. There's not a neighbor who speaks peace while allowing rockets to be fired or mortars to be fired on our towns and villages. This is not a leader whose words do not match his heart. The Jordanians do not sanctify a covenant calling for our destruction, nor do they cling to a phased plan seeking our dissolution in stages. For a quarter of a century, we've had a de facto peace with the Jordanian kingdom, and this treaty completes it and grants it a formal mandate. And yet in our region, Mr. Speaker, peaceful intentions are a necessary but insufficient condition for cementing real peace. No one can guarantee that circumstances will not change or that intentions will not be overturned by the force of time. Therefore, a second condition is necessary to ensure true peace: security arrangements which will deter those attempting to violate the peace in the future. I can therefore say that this second condition exists in the agreement before us. In it, Israel does not abandon its defensive positions in exchange for solemn pledges routinely violated by this dictator or this arch-terrorist, nor does this agreement entail the tearing away of the heart of our ancestral homeland, rending apart the heart of the Jewish people. This is a genuine peace, not a political tactic, whose sole purpose is to seize control of terrorists in order to improve position for launching a better war. We want peace with those who wish to live alongside us, not those who want to replace us. The peace treaty with Jordan should thus serve as a model for future peace agreements with other Arab countries, a peace based on sincere intention, a peace through strength, and a peace that unites the entire people. Mr. President, you have just come back to us from Damascus. They're talking there of another peace treaty, and we all desire a peace treaty with Syria. You must have heard there of the Syrian claim to the Golan Heights. I would like to tell you, Mr. President, our demand is not less insistent and far more justified. The time has come for the aggressor to pay for his aggression and not those who are victims of aggression. Only IDF forces in the Golan, Mr. President, can ensure our future. No international force can ensure peace or can make such a war if it should prove necessary. Distinguished guests, members of Knesset, for thousands of years, the roots of the Jewish people have been planted deep in the soil of this land and of this city. The recognition that we are not a passing episode in this area is the key to true peace between us and our neighbors. And equally, the view that we are a foreign interloper is the root of the ongoing struggle and the fuel that fires Pan-Arabic and Islamic extremism still directed against us today. Merely 2 days ago, I heard a Palestinian leader expounding this extremist view. One of its leaders compared Israel to the Crusaders. He said the Crusaders conquered the land, held it for 200 years, and then vanished. That too will be the fate of Israel, is what he said. The disappearance in recent years of some of the Arabs, the fact that they have abandoned this outlook is due to their gradual recognition of the deep link of the Jewish people to its roots in this country, and the fact that they will never be able to get rid of us as they did of the Crusaders, that it will not be able to roll us, to overcome us, that we have strength and purpose and faith sufficient to struggle for our homeland and our only one lowly state. The gradual shift in our perception is a direct result of our return to this land, the building of communities throughout the land, and the ingathering of waves of immigrants, and particular, our victory in the Six-Day War. No longer will the Jews coming to join us have to live in a narrow coastal strip. We are now a powerful people that has returned to its historic homeland, given it defensible borders and united forever, its capital under Israeli sovereignty. This unique realization of Zionism is what led to the peace with Egypt and to the peace with Jordan, which we are marking today in Jerusalem. Thus, therefore, the only way to broaden the circle of genuine peace is to strengthen Zionism and not to forsake it, to maintain our defensive positions on the Golan, Samaria, and Judea, and not to retreat from them, strengthening the Jewish presence in the land and not dismantling it, increasing Jewish immigration and not diminishing it, fortifying the unity of our eternal capital and not weakening it, and conducting a relentless battle against terrorism. We must strengthen our hold on Jerusalem and all its parts.
The 1000th anniversary of the days when King David united our ancient capital. We've built here truly a city on the hill with faith and creeds open to all. But it's a united city under Israeli sovereignty, and it must remain so. This is our policy. It will always be our policy, and may I express the hope that one day, Mr. President, it will be your policy, the policy of the United States.
We are still in the midst of the process of realizing Zionism. Some talk of the post-Zionist era. Mr. Speaker, not us. The quest for peace cannot proceed at the expense of Zionism, but from the effort to fully realize Zionist goals. These two paths complement each other. The realization of our claim to Eretz Israel alongside the vision for peace, and the peace in these. On this day, we wish peace to our neighbors, and first and foremost to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Mr. Speaker, members of Parliament, not every day can the leader of the opposition welcome and congratulate the Prime Minister on such a meaningful step that has united the entire nation. So for me, this is a great day, also because of the unity that it symbolizes. Our strength lies in unity, not in division and not in war. And I'd like to remember those who have enabled us to reach this day, the soldiers who have stood on guard through over the years, who have given their lives and who have helped us to overcome the difficulties. It is through the soldiers that we have reached these wonderful days of peace and of hope. I'd like to thank Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu very much for his address. Yes, indeed, it is positive. Members of the Knesset, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call upon the President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton, to address the Knesset.
Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Netanyahu, ladies and gentlemen of the Knesset, let me begin by thanking the Prime Minister and the people of Israel for welcoming me to your wonderful country, and thanking all of you for giving me the opportunity to address this great democratic body where clearly people of all different views are welcome to express their convictions. I felt right at home. Yesterday, Israel took a great stride toward fulfilling the ancient dream of the Jewish people, the patriarch's dream of a strong and plentiful people living freely in their own land, enjoying the fruits of peace with their neighbors. Nearly 17 years after President Sadat came to this chamber to seek peace, and Prime Minister Begin reached out in reconciliation, and just over a year after Israel and the PLO declared a pathway to peace on the south lawn of the White House, Israel and Jordan have now written a new chapter. Tonight, we praise the courage of the leaders who have given life to this treaty, Prime Minister Rabin and Foreign Minister Paris. They have shown the vision and the tenacity of other leaders of Israel's past, whose names will be remembered always for their devotion to your cause and your people. Ben-Gurion, Meir, Begin. In your life, Prime Minister, we see the life of your country. As a youth, you wished to fulfill the commandment to farm the land of Israel. But instead, you had to answer the call to defend the people of Israel. You have devoted your life to cultivating strength so that others could till the soil in safety. You have fought many battles and won many victories in war. Now, in strength, you are fighting and winning battles for peace. Indeed, you have shown your people that they can free themselves from the siege, that for the first time they can make real a peace for the generations. For the American people, too, this peace is a blessing. For decades, as Israel has struggled to survive, we have rejoiced in your triumphs and shared in your agonies. In the years since Israel was founded, Americans of every faith have admired and supported you. Like your country, ours is a land that welcomes exiles, a nation of hope, a nation of refuge. From the Orient and Europe, and now from the former Soviet Union, your people have come. Ashkenazim and Sephardim, Yemenites and Ethiopians, all of you committed to living free, to building a common home. 1 in every 4 of the citizens of this country is an Arab, something very few people know beyond your borders. Even without the blessings of secure borders, you have secured for your own people the blessings of democracy. With all of its turmoil and debate, it is still the best of all systems. In times of war and times of peace, every president of the United States since Harry Truman and every Congress has understood the importance of Israel. The survival of Israel is important not only to our interests, but to every single value we hold dear as a people. Our role in war has been to help you defend yourself by yourself. That is what you have asked. Now that you are taking risks for peace, our role is to help you to minimize the risks of peace. I am committed to working with our Congress to maintain the current levels of military and economic assistance. We have taken concrete steps to strengthen Israel's qualitative edge. The U.S.-Israel Science and Technology Commission, unprecedented Israeli access to the U.S. high technology market, and acquisition of advanced computers. All these keep Israel in the forefront of global advances and competitive in global markets. I have also taken steps to enhance Israel's military and your capacity to address possible threats not only to yourselves, but to the region. F-15 aircraft are being provided, and F-16s transferred out of U.S. stocks. We work closely with you to develop the Arrow missile to protect against the threat of ballistic missiles. As we help to overcome the risks of peace, we also are helping to build a peace that will bring with it the safety and security Israel deserves. That peace must be real, based on treaty commitments arrived at directly by the parties, not imposed from outside. It must be secure. Israel must always be able to defend itself by itself. And it must be comprehensive. We have worked hard to end the Arab boycott, and we've had some success, but we will not stop until it is completely lifted. There is a treaty with Jordan and an agreement with the PLO, but we must keep going until Syria and Lebanon close the circle of states entering into peace, and the other nations of the Arab world normalize their relations with Israel. This morning in Damascus, I discussed peace with President Assad. He repeated at our press conference what he had earlier said to his own parliament. Syria has made a strategic choice for peace with Israel. He also explained that Syria is ready to commit itself to the requirements of peace through the establishment of normal, peaceful relations with Israel. His hope, as he articulated it, is to transform the region from a state of war to a state of peace that enables both Arabs and Israelis to live in security, stability, and prosperity. We have been urging President Assad to speak to you in a language of peace that you can understand. Today, he began to do so. Of course, it will take more than words, much more than words. Yet I believe something is changing in Syria. Its leaders understand that it is time to make peace. There will still be a good deal of hard bargaining before a breakthrough, but they are serious about proceeding. Just as we have worked with you from Camp David to Wadi Araba to bring peace with security to your people, so too we will walk with you on the road to Damascus for peace with security. There are those who see peace still as all too distant. Surely they include the families of those burned in the rubble of a community center in Buenos Aires, those in the basement of New York's World Trade Center, the loved ones of the passengers on bus number 5, and of course, 2 people who have, as been noted, are in this chamber with us tonight, and we honor their presence. The parents of Corporal Nakshan Waxman, a son of your nation, and I proudly say, a citizen of ours. We grieve with the families of those who are lost and with all the people of Israel. So long as Jews are murdered just because they are Jews or just because they are citizens of Israel, the plague of anti-Semitism lives, and we must stand against it. We must stand against terror as strongly as we stand for peace. For without an end to terror, there can be no peace. The forces of terror and extremism still threaten us all. Sometimes they pretend to act in the name of God and country, but their deeds violate their own religious faith and make a mockery of any notion of honorable patriotism. As I said last night to the parliament in Jordan, we respect Islam. Millions of American citizens every day answer the Muslim call to prayer. But we know that the real fight is not about religion or culture. It is about a worldwide conflict between those who believe in peace and those who believe in terror, those who believe in hope and those who believe in fear. Those who stoke the fires of violence and seek to destroy the peace, make no mistake about it, have one great goal. Their goal is to make the people of Israel, who have defeated all odds on the field of battle, to give up inside on the peace by giving in to the doubts that terror brings to every one of us. But having come so far, you cannot give up or give in. Your future must lie in the words of a survivor of the carnage of bus number 5, who said, "I want the peace process to continue. I want to live in peace. I want my children to live in peace." So let us say to the merchants of terror once again, you cannot succeed. You must not succeed. You will not succeed. You are the past, not the future. The peacemakers are the future. I say to you, my friends, in spite of all the dangers and difficulties that still surround you, the circle of your enemies is shrinking. Their time has passed. Their increasing isolation is reflected in the desperation of their disgusting deeds. Once in this area you were shunned. Now more and more you are embraced. As you share the waters of the River Jordan and work with your neighbors, new crops will emerge where the soil is now barren. As you join together to mine the Dead Sea for its minerals, you will bring prosperity to all your people. As you roll up the barbed wire and cross the desert of Arava, the sands will yield new life to you. As you dock in each other's ports along the Gulf of Aqaba, more and more people will have the chance to experience the wonders of both your lands, and more children will share the joys of youth, not the dread of war. This is the great promise of peace. It is the promise of making sure that all those who have sacrificed their lives did not die in vain. The promise of a Sabbath afternoon not violated by gunfight. A drive across the plains to the mountains of Moab, where Moses died and Ruth was born. A Yom Kippur of pure prayer without the rumble of tanks, voices of fear or rumors of war. After all the bloodshed and all your tears, you are now far closer to the day when the clash of arms is heard no more, and all the children of Abraham, the children of Isaac, the children of Ishmael, will live side by side in peace. This was, after all, the message the Prophet Muhammad himself brought to peoples of other faiths when he said, "There is no argument between us and you. God will bring us together, and unto him is the homecoming." And this was the message Moses spoke to the children of Israel when, for the last time, he spoke to them as they gathered to cross the River Jordan into the Promised Land. When he said, "I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life, so that you and your descendants may live." This week, once again, the people of Israel made a homecoming. Once again, you chose life. Once again, America was proud to walk with you. The Prime Minister mentioned a story in his remarks that he never asked me about. Wouldn't it be embarrassing if it weren't true?
have too much.
The truth is that the only time my wife and I ever came to Israel before today was 13 years ago with my pastor on a religious mission. I was then out of office. I was the youngest former governor in the history of the United States. No one thought I would ever be here. Perhaps my mother, no one else. We visited the holy sites. I relived the history of the Bible, of your scriptures and mine. And I formed a bond with my pastor. Later, when he became desperately ill, he said he thought I might one day become president. And he said, more bluntly than the prime minister did, if you abandon Israel, God will never forgive you. He said it is God's will that Israel, the biblical home of the people of Israel, continue forever and ever. And so I say to you tonight, my friends, one of our presidents, John Kennedy, reminded us that here on earth, God's will must truly be our own. It is for us to make the homecoming, for us to choose life, for us to work for peace. But until we achieve a comprehensive peace in the Middle East, and then after we achieve comprehensive peace in the Middle East, know this: your journey is our journey, and America will stand with you now and always. Thank you. God bless you.